I'm Yvonne Hamoud, registered social worker and owner of New Moon Counseling. But out of the office, I'm a mom, wife, daughter, sister, and friend. Join me each week as I sit with a special guest to discuss everyday things that impact our mental health. We'll be chatting about everything from mental health and relationships to media and current events, as well as personal experiences and reflections, all in the hopes of normalizing our humanness and helping you see that you're not alone. This is Outside the Therapy Room. Hi everyone, welcome back to Outside the Therapy Room. Today we are joined by Ashley Mariani. Welcome back.
Thanks.
And now we're in season 2.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's crazy. But thank you so much for being back here. We have a fun topic today. We are going to be talking about morally gray men in fiction books and novels. We were talking a little bit before we started recording about some of the novels that kind of depict these kinds of men. And so the big one is ACOTAR series. There's also Fourth Wing. And you were mentioning kind of really diving into that fantasy world a few years ago.
Yeah, it must have been much pre-children. So I want to say probably around 2008, 2009, 2010. Again, I can't remember what the series was, but I remember there was at least 4 or 5 books, and it would be like a summertime read on the dock kind of thing. And it was easy to get lost in those books.
Yeah.
Maybe a little less erotic focused than probably what today's novels are like. Also thinking probably erotica back then was on, the far shelves at Chapters Indigo versus now it's like front and center.
Very hush-hush before. Yeah. Even now I'm remembering like a Friends episode when Rachel's reading an erotica book and getting really teased about it being porn.
Yeah.
But you're right. It was back in the shadows, in the dark corners of Indigo or libraries. But yeah, they're much more open now.
Yeah. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with social media and whoever we can thank for this book talk trend that's going on. I don't even know who the original person was that kind of brought it to the light.
Me neither, but it's been huge on TikTok. I think, I was talking to my cousin as well when I started reading the ACOTAR series last summer. And she reminded me that the book's been out for a really long time, and it just kind of blew up again on TikTok. And so that's going to be kind of our talk today, because even in some of those books, whether they have a lot of erotica or not, the male character in it kind of shows similar characteristics. And there's been such a hype for a lot of women who are reading these books, kind of like, having like your book boyfriend.
Yes, and that's a hashtag, I think, now too, right? Book boyfriend.
Yeah, so there's been like, again, this shift, but within that we see these male characters being very dominant, obsessive, protective, all of those things, but within that as well, there's like space for vulnerability and understanding kind of like the trauma that they went through and all of these things that we get to learn as we read more about the character. Yeah. And so, I guess my first question is kind of, why are we so drawn to these brooding, morally gray men in these fantasy books? What do you think?
Okay, so I would preface this podcast by saying this is probably an episode for a very specific listener, right? There's going to be a lot of people that are like, I'm not listening to this right now.
Totally fair.
100% fair.
Yeah.
But I will say that there's a correlation between the trends that are happening in the fantasy world surrounding relationships and what's also coming up in the context of the therapy room, right?
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with women being exhausted. Women carrying the mental load, women having decision fatigue, women feeling like they just have to carry it all and do it all, whether that's true or not. The perception and the feeling is that they're doing it all.
Yeah.
And also society kind of creating an outlet for men to take a more passive role within the context of relationships. And I think this kind of touches on something that we chatted about last time too, where we've asked men to make themselves smaller, let's say, for lack of a better word, take up less space, because whatever space they were taking up felt intimidating or felt suffocating, or this conversation around masculinity and how if you identify with any kind of masculinity, it must be toxic.
Right.
Trying to think far too much about black and white instead of gray. And so men are operating from this stance of, I can't be too much because I don't want to be a threat.
Right.
So I'm going to make myself smaller. But nobody actually taught them how to be a healthy masculine within the context of their relationship. So they've just pulled back a lot. And so by doing that, by default, women have had to pick up more. So now we have this flood of nice guy or good guy energy that men are very passive. They're very go with the flow, whatever makes sense for you, whatever you want to do. And women are like, I just need you to make a decision.
Yeah.
I'm tired of making decisions all day long. If I don't like what you've decided, I have no problem communicating with you. Can you please do something else? I'm not feeling that. And so with this male character that we're seeing in these books and in these trends, the energy is very much, I've got you.
Yeah.
I'll make the decision for you. Let me handle it. I'll figure it out. And then follow through.
The follow through is huge, but you're 100% on it. I think that, in those books and, with these male characters, that's what they're doing to the female character, is taking care of them, making the decision go. A lot of the times these characters are wealthy. They're in really,
or calloused working men.
Yes. They're doing, they're very much in their masculinity. And there's moments where they're able to open up and share that vulnerability. And so it's kind of this, fantasy space that we are in when we're reading these books, that we are actually able to observe a male being in both the caretaking part and then also the, the dominating decision-making, I got you kind of energy. And so you're 100%, I agree with you. I think that that's so interesting to see how we gravitate then towards finding these male characters in movies or in books in this case.
I think that there was a rise of this boss babe culture too.
Yeah.
Maybe less so recently, but I would say even a good 5 to 8 years ago, it was all about boss babe culture, hustle, 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 boss babe. And so even in my practice, I was seeing these women who were high earning corporate women, main income earners in their couple, come to therapy and say, I do not want to have sex with my husband. I am not attracted to my husband. Okay, why? Tell me more. What is this about? Or what are you not attracted to? Is it physical features? Is it something about his personality? Well, I am sick and tired of having to be the one to initiate sex. And when sex happens, it's the same sex all the time. And he's so insecure. And so that comes off in how he touches me and how he, chooses whatever positions or doesn't choose positions in bed. And that's not attractive to me. And so I would say, what do you fantasize about? What are your fantasies? And every time it's this, I want rough sex. I want to be thrown up against a wall. I want to be edged. I have interest in looking into more kink culture or more BDSM. And I'm like, okay, that's because you're tired of making decisions all day at work. You're tired of being in a position of power all day at work, and you come home and you just want to be, I don't want to say nurtured in that sense, but you want to be taken care of. You want somebody
to take
else.
charge.
Yes.
Yeah. And again, and I'm remembering like 50 Shades of Grey.
100%.
Which was huge, but it was like contract. I'm taking charge. You're new at this. Okay, I'm going to guide you to this new world of sex in a gentle way, but we're both going to be good. And so I think there's also that, you know, and in a lot of books, like the ACOTAR series that I know you haven't read, and I'm going to try not to
spoil it
for people, but like the character in there too is, you know, yes, taking charge, but also empowering the female character. Like, you can do this on your own, kind of giving that gentle guidance. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds.
Well, and this is what I think has always been called in the kink world, but now new terminology is daddy energy.
Mm-hmm. Like full taken care of.
Yep.
I'm covered. I'm good. Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about like being hooked into this world a few years ago. Was there anything that kind of stands out about the character that kind of hooked you into this new kind of fantasy genre, or I guess book genre?
Yeah. I think the very first, I will say, erotic novel I ever read, the main character, the male character, was would fall under that like lumberjack masculine energy, where it was very much probably less vulnerability in terms of emotions, but more like an avoidant dynamic, but still taking care of the woman when the woman was in need, or doing the chores, doing the, you know, stereotypical blue jobs around the farm or whatever it was. And so that, I think, for a lot of women, that's probably very familiar. That kind of like, I fantasize about a man who can physically handle things in my environment, like physically handle the handiwork, or why we have kind of like a connection to construction workers or blue collar trades and that dynamic. But then the next series was that I got into was very much the like the fantastical world of the Fae, and merging the human world and the fairy world, and what that looks like. And I really wish I could remember the names of the books, but
you'll have to let us know.
Yeah,
if it
I will
pops
find
up.
them. I'm sure they're dog-eared somewhere in my basement in a Rubbermaid bin.
Yeah, the kind of blue collar male character. I'm remembering a line from a book I read that was like, his calloused hands on my like very, you know, sensitive skin. Like there is that, again, this is more like into like the erotica foreplay piece of the book, but yeah, there is like that attraction or interest in characters like that. And it's all around the being taken care of. And as we get into more of like the Fae fantasy world that we're hearing a lot more about, that's all over social media, like then it's
less of the blue collar feeling and more of the bad boy feeling.
More of the bad boy feeling, and you're also immersed into a whole new world, a whole new space, whole new culture, whole new kind of like hierarchy, and trying to understand these things. And so it is really an escapism that we can experience when we're reading these books, and then have our book boyfriends.
Well, and the Fae world too is interesting because there's a lot of references to royalty.
Yes.
And deep down inside, many of us have our inner princesses that we want to nurture and hold space for. And so perhaps the world of the Fae also taps into our inner Disney princess.
Oh my goodness, yes. I also think that these in like this fantasy world, it also gives us a space to kind of safely feel the dominance and the danger and like all of the tension, high stakes romance that's happening in that space without any actual risk. Kind of like, you know, I don't know if you've done this before, but I know for some therapists or for some clients that I've had, I've recommended watching a scary movie because they're able to kind of process their anxious emotions in a place that they know is safe. They can pause a movie and they're going to be okay. And so I think some of like really diving into that fantasy world, it gives us all of the danger, thrill, all of those things, but in a very safe space. We can put the book down and we're back into reality and we're good and we're safe.
And that is part of the concept of BDSM too, right? Mm-hmm. BDSM is very consensual, contractual. There's conversations that happen beforehand. There's debriefs that happen after. There's check-ins. There's caretaking that goes on.
Yeah.
But the client, well, maybe if we're talking less about couples and more about like paid sex workers, the client in a BDSM dynamic that is a paid dynamic is 100% in control at any point. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes what we're seeing is people wanting to pay for this dynamic so that they can put themselves back in a situation that would have been traumatizing, mm-hmm. or a memory that was traumatizing, an experience, but they're exposing themselves, so this kind of exposure therapy piece, to a similar environment without being in a victim capacity. Mm-hmm. So they get to say stop. They get to say, I want to explore this more. They get to say, I'm having flashbacks. They get to say, I am the director of all of this, mm-hmm. so that they can then feel, not that I enjoy the word empowered, but truly empowered in that moment to control or take control back of a environment that was very scary for them.
Yeah, while you were saying that, I was remembering one part of the show Dying for Sex with Michelle Williams. Mm-hmm. It's a really good show.
Yeah, I feel like I'm so out of the loop with like pop culture.
Yeah, but in that one, so she has cancer. She's going to be dying, but she wants to experience sex because she had never had an orgasm in her marriage. And so she goes and she finds somebody who does BDSM and kind of has that first experience with somebody, and very much like she was in control. Yeah. She could say when she's comfortable, when she wants it to stop, and there was no anger, no frustration on the other person's hand. It was just very much caretaking. So like, thank you for kind of communicating that and how it can kind of, again, relate into our topic. But that little clip just kind of popped into my head while you were talking about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We talked a little bit about like the alpha with a heart kind of thing, right? There's this big dominant guy, but there is the heart that's there, the care, the compassion, those moments of vulnerability, all of those things. What do you think it's about, like this, and you spoke to it a little bit before, but this like fiercely loyal, protective, emotionally wounded at one point, like male character that, yeah, just like, you know, we can really have a soft spot for.
Well, I think it taps into many of our parts, right? Mm-hmm. So we talked about needing to be cared for, but then we also talked about wanting to be nurtured and also nurturing. So it kind of evens out the playing field and doesn't feel like a power dynamic that's not fair or equitable, so to speak, when in one moment they're caretaking us, and in another moment we're tending to their emotional wounds. Yeah. They're tending to maybe our physical wounds or our bodily needs, and we're tending to their emotional needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's more of like a give and take.
The polarity of it.
Yeah. I love that. Why do you think social media has played such a role in fueling this kind of popularity for this kind of genre of book?
Well, I think that, again, there's this piece to normalizing what has been happening in the minds of women for a long time. Mm-hmm. Romance novels have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And so with most things, social media has given us an opportunity to bring it to the forefront and normalize it and say, hello, if you've been experiencing this, you're not alone, which is why it has gained so much popularity, because women are like, oh, I am not the only one who is feeling this or thinking this or enjoying this or doing this. So it brings a sense of like community.
Yeah. It also opens a space for creativity. I don't know if you've seen some of the TikToks where they make their partners like do a part of like the story. I think it was like the, throw against the wall and
hat
like
backwards.
the hat backwards, throw against the wall and like give a gentle kiss, and like everyone's going crazy. But it's become like this trend that people are doing now. Mm-hmm. And like you said, kind of just opening up the space to, see that we're not alone, that we, that's the power of social media, I guess, at times. The positivity of it is that it allows us to not feel as alone in what we're interested in and what we're maybe wanting or craving.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's and it gives you, I mean, under the guise of let's do this for social media, it gives you and your partner a chance to perform something and then give it permission to happen more often. Like, we're doing this for social media, so can you just stand here and put your hat backwards? But now your partner's seeing how much it lights you up and the smile on your face. And now there's an opportunity for him to do that more often, because I think times men just, you say you want this, I don't know what that means. If we think about how kinesthetic or visual men are in their learning, they really just need to do the thing first and then get a sense of, okay, was that right? Was that wrong? And women are so verbal in how they process. So when they're saying things like, I just want you to romance me, men are going,
what does that mean?
But like, buy you flowers? What does that look like? I don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
But now we're literally choreographing them in a moment that it might not be for us in that moment, but it's for the viewers, it's for the audience, the followers. But you've just given the choreography to your husband or your partner, and now they can do that more often.
And even on social media, there's been like, give your, like, men, read this book. This is what your woman wants kind of thing. But they're like, even in conversation with girlfriends or in like other spaces, I've also heard of some girls grabbing like a page and then just gently giving it to their partner, being like, just like, peruse this page, take a look at it, and then come see me later.
Yes.
But it can, again, give them the choreography. And also it helps us women know kind of what we are wanting. And it gives us the vocabulary and the imagery of what we are wanting to try in the bedroom, again, and like in a safe space with our partner, and communicating that and having like a tool like the book to be able to kind of communicate that with.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think too, and it's so interesting, fantasy versus reality. We fantasize about things, and that's what sometimes they just need to stay fantasy.
Yeah.
Because when we bring them into real life, then it's kind of like, I really didn't think that would feel that way. And so I don't like that. That gives me the ick. I hear that lots of times with couples who are trying to, spice up their sex life, and they'll say, maybe we should bring a third person in. And we have to dive into, is this a fantasy that you would like to bring the third person in? If it's just in the fantasy world, then kind of let's explore if this is something we keep in the fantasy world.
Yeah.
If you want it to happen within your relationship, there's lots of conversation, maybe even contracts that need to happen. How do we know when this doesn't work? And does that take away from the fantastical part of it? And then once it happens, is it what you thought it would be? What are the residual impacts of that?
Yeah.
How are you communicating after the fact? Are we in shock? Are we upset about a bodily sensation that came up? All of those things.
Yeah. Like what comes from that too is expectation, right? And that kind of going into our next theme is, we can romanticize these characters in these books. And sometimes it can impact our expectation for what we want our partner to be. So whether that's in the bedroom or outside of the bedroom, when we're like, can't you just like take care of me? Can't you just be the one making those choices? Can't you just whatever, in comparison to the book? And so sometimes I've talked to, again, like, with some girlfriends or, in those spaces, there can be like, I read this book and I'm so frustrated with my husband. Like, it really can impact our emotions because we're having these expectations from what we're reading within fantasy, and we're bringing that into the real world. And so you just did a great example of how it would look like in the bedroom, in like that sexual space. But outside of that, it can also cause us to maybe be more irritable towards our partner, to be more annoyed, to like all of these things that can, leave our partner feeling maybe a little confused as to where all of this is coming from. But it's those expectations and making sure that we're checking on them.
And this brings up a great point because this is one of my qualms with pornography use. And I will say that for a very long time, I was pro-pornography, very pro-pornography, to the point where I had an Erica Lust affiliation link. And so I would give my clients the link and they could, download whatever content that they wanted. And then working in this field, and by no means do I shame people, but I have seen the impacts of chronic pornography use, particularly by men, and how the relationship begins to deteriorate. And it really breaks my heart when that happens for a couple. And it breaks my heart even further when it's so normalized that this is just what men do when they're not receiving enough sexual satisfaction from their partners. And no one talks about the side effects of using it. And one of the side effects is having unrealistic expectations for the mother of your children or your long-term partner, like from what she looks like to how she subjects her body to the things that, she's going to quote unquote let you do to her. Like, she is a individual. She could have trauma. She has, things, likes and dislikes that these sometimes trafficked women in these videos, these clips, are not communicating. They're not meant to be a person in those dynamics.
Yeah. And the expectation then impacts our mood. We are unsatisfied. We are disappointed. We can lash out. Like, all of those things can happen. And yes, in the porn world, like, that can be maybe mostly men. We can make that assumption. And in the fantasy, like, literary world, it can definitely be more women who are feeling that way towards their partner. But either way, like, it's important to kind of check ourselves and have those realistic expectations. And that also means when there's dominance, when there's, that need for control, all of those things, that can sometimes create an unrealistic expectation for what we want, which can then lead to unhealthy relationships or seeking out, maybe men who are only that, and then we're stuck in difficult situations.
And I will say the rom-coms of the, 2000s probably did something similar. But at that point, what became so attractive is the emotional availability of men, right? So now we've merged these cultural shifts where the rom-coms spoke to the fantasy of women wanting men more emotionally available. And now we're moving towards this like bad boy, dark masculine energy. And we want to then merge those two together to be like the perfect person.
I mean, in these books, they do a pretty good job of it. But also we needed to keep in mind that they're written by female authors for female readers for all of those things.
It's great sales.
It's great sales, and it's enjoyable and entertaining. And there needs to be that boundary of this is a fantasy world and this is a real world. 100%. And not only in terms of, expecting our partner, but also what we are seeking in a relationship if we are in that process of our lives where we are dating, where we're, experimenting, all of those things. It's important to kind of, check in on exactly what it is that we're wanting and not basing it off of a character in a book. We want to check all of these marks. So what would you say are some red flags that are maybe glamorized, that we should be mindful for when we are reading this kind of genre?
I mean, all of the telltale signs of like control, abuse, avoidant communication, egocentric behavior,
Possessiveness.
Yeah. I think I really do think that there are some of us in the world where that is the reality of how they date, right? They can identify, but he's so helpful and he always has my back and he always comes with me everywhere I go. And yeah, you know, like he gets a little bit jealous when I'm talking to a male colleague in public, or he goes through my phone, but like, you know, I didn't have any of that good stuff at any other point in my life. So I'm okay to accept the red flags. And I think it's important to remember that you don't ever have to accept those types of behaviors from any person in your life, regardless.
Yeah.
So preparing yourself with intention going into reading these types of books to say, like, is this actually what I want from a person? Do I actually want to be, you know, followed around while I'm grocery shopping and have a partner just like suddenly appear in a aisle not expected? Like, no, I really don't want that. In the context of the book, it might be like, you know, exciting to think that all they can think about is me, and they want to be everywhere that I am, and they're so protective of me, but that's not reality.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it, like kind of confusing some of those qualities, like the possessiveness, the controlling behaviors as passion instead of like potential warning signs.
Yeah.
And so it's being able to kind of differentiate that from the fantasy world and then into reality. Because like you pointed out, a lot of those can be abusive, manipulative kind of, you know, relationships when we're in the real world. But in books, again, it's glamorized. We see some of that emotional development, and so we're like, oh, this means that they care. So really being mindful when you are reading these books that you are also aware of those potential red flags, and that exists within this fantasy world and not necessarily is going to be the same thing out in the real world.
Which is why book club is like great accountability, I guess.
Oh my goodness, for sure. I'm part of very many book clubs. Like, I maybe need to like not be in so many. But yeah, I think some other like potential downsides to some of these books are also like the pressure on partners, right? Some readers might feel, we talked a little bit about this already, but like disappointed in the real life partners don't measure up to these like characters in these books. And so those red flags are important for us to, again, just, you know, keep an eye out. You can still enjoy the book that you're reading while being mindful that there's those red flags in the real world.
And thinking about the things that you really enjoy about these characters and understanding, like, are these skills that someone could acquire?
Yeah.
And going back to your partner and saying, you know, I was reading my book, and the character that I felt most compelled to understand is this character. And this character had these qualities, but these skills. And I'm wondering if these are skills that maybe we can work on together. Because much of the conversation that I have with men in particular, they'll say things like, I'm just not a romantic person. Babies aren't born out of utero romantic. You have to learn how to be romantic. Yeah. It's a skill that you acquire. It's not a characteristic or a personality trait. You acquire the skill of being romantic. Yeah. Just like you acquire the skill of being polite or kind. So if a partner comes to you and says, this character is so romantic, these are the things that we're doing, maybe if you're the male partner listening, it could be, instead of dismissing that, saying, it sounds like this is a skill I could probably work on, and I'm happy to do that if you feel like it's going to benefit our relationship.
Yeah. And again, that's one of the pros from reading, is that it maybe allows us to see what it is that we are wanting or needing or wanting to try, but then it becomes a conversation, you know, as a collaboration with your partner to kind of work towards some of those skills. Yeah. But that's a really good way to look at it too. Right? Because sometimes we don't know what we're wanting or what we're needing. And again, like a book can give us that awareness and the words to use when we're bringing up that in conversation. And careful with comparison.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've had to catch myself sometimes when I'm reading some books to be like, well, my partner doesn't, do that. And then I'm like, give him a little side eye. But it's important to kind of just catch yourself when you're making those comparisons. This is a book. We're reading like those highlights that the author of this book wanted us to pay attention to.
Yes.
And that's not always going to play out in that way. So being fair to yourself and to your partner in terms of those comparisons, but having those conversations if we are wanting to explore something.
That's not any different than social media. Like, don't go on social media and look at an influencer's, get ready with me with a spotless house, no children crying, perfectly clean countertops, the perfect body, et cetera, et cetera. Like, again, social media can very much be fantasy world.
Mm-hmm. When I had mentioned the topic to you, you had kind of brought in something that you kind of read with some of your clients.
I don't read this with my clients,
you don't.
But the analogy, I will use the analogies. So when I work with couples, oftentimes I notice that men need analogies or metaphors to help understand, specifically when I'm talking about polarity. What is polarity? What does polarity look like? How does it feel? And growing up, my family has always had horses, and my mom and my sister are like the horseback riders. They are reiners, they ride Western. So cowboy culture has always been a part of my life. I've never been the horseback cowgirl. That was never my thing. But I have a huge passion for horsemanship in the sense of learning how to read a horse. And as I've moved into motherhood and being a mature woman, I've really resonated with the energy of a horse and how the energy of a horse connects with feminine energy, this wild and free energy, this mystical, magical energy. And so the analogy of a cowboy practicing horsemanship is very powerful if you give it imagery. I don't want anybody listening to think that I am saying that a woman is a horse and needs to be rode. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying that they are magical creatures that need to be handled delicately. And so I have a little blurb that I'm going to read to demonstrate that in my most nighttime telephone voice as possible. He doesn't rush her. A true cowboy steadies his breath and lets the horse feel him before he takes a step closer. Present comes first, patience follows, and trust builds slowly. That rhythm is what women crave in the pages of a book. A man who carries direction, who holds the weight, who moves with certainty. In real life, so many women are exhausted from running the household, planning every detail, managing every mood. And in fantasy, the cowboy shows up as his own energy, steady, ready, and capable of leading. Not every man carries that kind of horsemanship. Some grab the reins too tightly, pulling until the horse yields out of fear. They call it devotion, but the horse's eyes tell another story. That same energy shows up in certain book tropes. Possessiveness painted as love, mystery written as silence, dominance portrayed as strength. Readers feel the thrill on the page, yet the nervous system always knows when something is off. A real cowboy understands the horse is powerful, full of agency, and stepping onto its back is a privilege. The ride happens because of trust, not because of force. Intimacy and relationships follow the same law. When a woman finally feels that steadiness, that reverence for her power, she can soften into her own rhythm. And that is where desire lives, in the attunement, in the strength that never needs to crush, in the trust that always allows the wild nature to stay alive.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a really nice way for us to close off our episode today.
Yeah.
And hopefully with that, we leave you with some reflection, some awareness as you go into your books, and get to enjoy them for what they are, these fantasy novels. But I love that kind of view of the horsemanship and the cowboy relationship.
Cowboy core.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley, for being here. This was so much fun. And hopefully you'll be back again. Ashley, where can people find you?
The Rogue Therapist on Instagram, so at therogue.therapist. My website for my clinic is mindonline.ca and at mindonline.ca on Instagram. And if you're looking to have a wedding officiated or a ceremony facilitated of any capacity, my ministry is the Heart and Hearth Ministry.
That's amazing. We will make sure to have all of that
Thank you.
in the show notes so people can find you. We will be back with a brand new episode next week on EMDR with our team member here, Sarah. So make sure to check that out. And you can give us a follow at Outside the Therapy Room Pod, and we will see you again next week. Bye. Thank you for listening to Outside the Therapy Room. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you reside in Ontario and are interested in working with one of our therapists, please visit our website in the show notes. If you reside outside of Ontario, a quick Google search or search through Psychology Today will help you find a therapist near you.